Hey guys, welcome back. I just returned from a wilderness medicine conference in Montana. During one of the breaks between lectures, I was making some notes and I thought about the different items buried in our first aid kits that we can use to improvise fire making when push comes to shove. Now, I wouldn't consider my first aid kit my primary fire making kit, but there are some items that we can bring to bear when push comes to shove. Later on in another video, I'm going to review my pocket fire making kit. But today, let's go over some of the items that we can harvest from our first aid kits and improvise tools for fire making. This is a trauma pad or abdominal pad, and of course gauze pads, Zuroform gauze, roller gauze, hand wipes, alcohol pads, hand sanitizer, antibiotic ointment, and chapstick. Alright, let's take a look at the trauma pad. I'm going to be using in this video this small little brass flint sparker wheel that I got from County Com, and I did a video on this recently on how to make this paracord carry loop, and I have another video where I use this to make fire in the winter in Yellowstone National Park. Now this is just one of many fire tools that we can use, including a lighter, a ferro rod, waterproof matches. Let's take a look at this abdominal pad. So if you tear this open, you end up with a 5x9 highly absorbent pad. Now we're going to take the outer wrap off and we'll discard that. This is primarily a synthetic material that probably don't want to use in burning. It's much like a fabric softener sheet. Now inside is a cotton bat that's covered in a paper sheet. So we're going to remove the paper sheath so we can get access to the cotton bat inside. Now this paper sheath is pretty much like toilet paper or tissue, and it certainly will burn very well, and you can use this as an adjunct to your fire making. As a quick demonstration, we're going to use a lighter and you'll see how readily that burns. Okay, what you have in the center of a trauma pad is a cotton batting. This is very much like the proverbial cotton ball that everybody uses in their fire making kit, basically covered in petroleum jelly or Vaseline. We're going to take a look at how this works as a fire making material. So we're going to tear off a small piece. Okay, we have a pile of fluffed out cotton matting, and we're going to take our sparker and we're just going to aim some sparks right down in there, and there you've got a nice fire just like you would with a cotton ball. Again, that is the matting from inside a trauma pad. Next thing we're going to take a look at is the alcohol prep pad. Now I'm not a big fan of putting these in first aid kits, and you'll see why in a minute, but they're great materials for fire starting. It's basically a small pad soaked in alcohol, in this case isopropyl alcohol. So we're going to open that little pad up, and it doesn't take very much because of the alcohol. And there you see you've got a nice little fire. Now here's what I prefer as an alcohol pad, a nice large hand sanitizer wipe. These are pause pads. We put them in our first aid kits. I also include these in our first aid kits because everybody expects them. But I think this is a much better option. This is a much bigger pad, as you'll see in a second, and it gives you a lot more options. We'll tear that open. This is soaked in ethyl alcohol, and here's why I like it so much for a first aid item. It's a much bigger sheet that you can do a lot more with, and from a fire making point of view, it gives you a much larger piece than this small pad. Again, I'm just going to kind of position it so I can aim the sparker, and you can see it doesn't take very much to get it going. Now what you're left with when the alcohol evaporates and burns is basically a sheet of paper that also burns, so it's a great little item for fire making. Let's take a look at roller gauze and 4x4 gauze pads. 4x4 gauze pad comes in quite a few of our kits. The roller gauze is included in our Outfitter Medic Roll. 4x4 gauze pad is basically a cotton fiber that can be very easily used as a piece of fire starting material. And what I'm doing here is I'm just teasing apart those fibers so that we have a little more surface area for the sparker. So I found this to be the hardest of all the first aid materials to start, but it does a good fire when it gets going. You just have to be patient. Next item is called Zuroform gauze. You can think of this as gauze that is impregnated with Vaseline or petroleum jelly. Pretty much impossible to start by itself. With an alcohol pad or a hand sanitizer wipe, it's not a problem. I'm going to cut off a small piece so we can see how that works. And again, you can either use an alcohol pad or a hand sanitizer wipe. For convenience and for size, I'm going to go with the hand sanitizer wipe. And you'll see that when the Zuroform gauze gets burning, it's much like a cotton ball that's impregnated with petroleum jelly. It's got extra fuel because of that petroleum jelly, and it will continue to burn for quite a long time, be a great adjunct for fire starting. Okay, here are 3 fuel sources in your first aid kit that you might not think about. Hand sanitizer gel, which is gelled alcohol. Antibiotic ointment. Carrier base is Vaseline or petroleum jelly, and the carrier base in Chapstick is also a wax petroleum product that is flammable. Let's take a look at the hand sanitizer. So again, we can take some Curlex. You could also take a gauze pad, and in this case we're going to just take a small section of Curlex, cut that with your knife or scissors, apply a good liberal amount of hand sanitizer, and just kind of work that into the gauze. And again, we just take our striker, and you'll see one quick swipe of the wheel and a little shower of sparks, and that lit up very easily. That is alcohol, gel, and Curlex. This is a 4x4 gauze pad, and we're going to use 1/2 to demonstrate the antibiotic ointment. Again, think of this as a little packet of Vaseline or petroleum jelly. I had a hard time starting the gauze pad. What I'm going to do is just take one of these alcohol pads. We'll just lay it right in there. Once that alcohol pad gets the gauze pad going, this acts like a cotton ball soaked with petroleum jelly. We're going to take some Vaseline from this Chapstick and just get a liberal amount in there. And again, I'll just use the ubiquitous alcohol prep. With some effort, you could start this gauze on its own, but I found it a little bit difficult, and it's just so much easier with the alcohol prep pad. So that starts it with one strike, and you'll see that it's burning pretty nice. One item you might not think about are Q-tips. Now, I put these Q-tips in the dental kit that is packed in our outfitter. These Q-tips are used to apply medications to the teeth and gums, but they make great little fire starting tools. Let's take a look how to use them. Old adage that holds true with all of these fire starting techniques is to fluff out the cotton or the fibers that we're going to use to start the fire. So I've got the fluffed out end. Now I'm going to take the other end and I'm going to apply some petroleum jelly. Remember, think of that as Vaseline or petroleum jelly, and we're just going to gently apply the dry fluff to that end. Now we're going to take the sparker and we're going to light that fluff on the end, and you'll see that petroleum jelly catch fire, and now this Q-tip is acting like a little match, and it'll give you some extended fire making capability. And that is just a Q-tip and Vaseline or antibiotic ointment. Alright, let's take a look at Chapstick and a Q-tip. And again, Chapstick is a nice little fuel source. In our outfitter, we pack a Chapstick in our medication module number 2, and it's basically a comfort item, but it's very nice to have if you need it or if someone in your party needs it. A lot of people carry one of these in their fleece jacket, their backpack, day pack, or jeans pocket. Let's take a look at how we can use this as a fire starter. Now we're going to take the Chapstick and we will liberally coat the other end, and we'll take the fluff off the end and apply it. And now we take our sparker, and you'll see that Chapstick is now catching fire, and again acts very much like the previous example where we had petroleum jelly from antibiotic ointment, and in this case we are using Chapstick and a Q-tip. Let's take a look at hand sanitizer and a Q-tip. Now the hand sanitizer we package in our outfitter in the PPE or personal protection equipment module, and that comes with 6 pairs of nitrile gloves, field towels, antimicrobial wipes, and you saw those earlier. They're very good fire fire starter, and of course the hand sanitizer gel, which is basically gelled alcohol. Let's take a look at how that works. Again, we start with fluffing out the tip of the Q-tip. We're just trying to maximize the surface area. Now what I'm going to do is fluff out the other end, maybe not quite as much. All I'm going to do here is use that to hold a few drops of hand sanitizer gel. So we're just going to drench that with the hand sanitizer. Take the fluffed end, and again that whole concept of just having that dry cotton end. Take our striker, and you'll see it lights up very easily, and because of that alcohol gel, it'll burn for quite a while, and that's a nice little fire starter technique as well. So that's a Q-tip and hand sanitizer. Alright, well the point of the video was to show you, buried in your first aid kit, there are multiple items that you can harvest for fire making capabilities when push comes to shove.